We all know what he's like, and he's just,
Well, it is.
he's just encouraged by the other side to do it. So now that's when I started
I
talking
mean,
to Carly.
who's at work?
I know, but Susan have to take, he doesn't have to take any of it, consecutively or something.
Oh, I thought I heard.
Frankly, offer money lots too.
That's what I told him. Like, he said, like, the council had anything to do with it.
I tried to say that he was not.
Conversations that I had.
He was
And
not
he just
here.
felt it was in my best interest, and he said, no, it's in my best
He
interest.
was not listening.
I said, if I knew it, I could be there for 2 or 3 months. And nobody representing the ward. And then I told Bob earlier, they were coming.
I just said it to you.
Bob should stop the bus.
Oh, did he? Yeah.
Because he had heard
Oh, yeah.
hearing things too. I said, no, I'm not upset.
Yeah.
For health reasons and stuff. Support you. I said, you know, approve programs.
Yeah. Next Thursday. Did you get, invite in the mail? It's next Thursday.
Well, he told me that he had
So it's 6
got
weeks, disability support.
the list from Mike Carney. And I think Mike's thinks I'm pissed off at him too.
No, I don't think so.
So I told him, we'll make sure I get one.
Welcome, everyone. Please stand so we can say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. We're going to have a presentation here with from Bill Davignano, Superintendent of Wastewater, regarding the Arcadis water filtration presentation. We'll switch over so you can put the screen down. I imagine you're going to need that. Or did you need to speak on it first?
No, I can just go through the presentation, so whenever you're ready, we can lower the screen and start.
All right.
I will just preface a couple of remarks, just that we started this back in the fall of last year. You guys were gracious enough to give us the money to do the study, to do the capital improvement plan. It was very in-depth. Arcadis came through with numerous staff, did a full assessment of the facility. We do have a study that you're going to receive. The actual report is about 77 pages long, and it gives you a detailed explanation of how each item was assessed, the scoring system. And if you're not interested in it, they're fairly simple to understand overall. Basically, most of them are 0 through 5, and they tell you whether 5 is excellent or bad shape, depending what they're grading, and you can learn that through the report. We're just going to go over the items that we're going to address in the first round. We have a 1A and a 1B, we're calling them, and he'll explain it more as we go along. And Dan Sider is the lead on this for Arcadis, but I do want to acknowledge Dave Conti spent hours and hours and hours with them and his staff and our maintenance staff going through with these folks in a lot of time. And so did Chelsea Spar from the engineer's office. She was hand in hand with this process. All our meetings, she attended a lot of the scoping stuff. So this really gets involved. It's already, we probably have just in hours at our facility, probably 30, 40 hours at the facility in time, on top of the hours that Arcadis had to put in doing all the legwork here. And this will just be a fairly brief presentation, and then we'll take questions afterwards, and hopefully we'll give you the right answers. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Again, my name's Dan Sider. I was the project manager for the capital improvement plan here. I've been with Arcadis for 3 years. Prior to that, I spent 10 years with the Erie County Water Authority. I was involved with their capital improvement program, with planning, design, construction, and then prior to that, I spent 10 years with another local consulting firm. So I was really excited that the city selected us for this project. I had a great time working with Bill and Dave and Chelsea and the staff at the treatment plants, going through all the different assets that you have out there, categorizing everything and developing what I hope that everyone here agrees on is a a decent 20-year capital improvement plan for what we looked at was the treatment plant, the Toller facility, and the Erie tank facility. So keep in mind, this doesn't necessarily include your distribution system or any of your water meters that are also part of the water fund. This is just focused on what we call vertical assets, so the structures that you see. So getting into the agenda, we're going to talk about some of the goals of the overall CIP. What I really want to focus on are the second and third bullet items that you see up there, the key findings from our condition assessment, and then how we went through that methodology of going through each asset and determining what the various capital projects need to be out at the treatment plant at Toller and in Erie. We'll touch on the financial modeling side of things and then finish up with some next steps. So what are the goals of this capital improvement plan? And if we go through this, really the first two bullets are some of the key items I wanted to highlight here. It's really to provide a support document for your long-term planning and budgeting as you go through the next 20 years of capital investment for your water facilities. And that's exactly what it is, right? A high-level project prioritization, schedule, and then overall budget from now through approximately 2040. The other aspect we can touch on this slide is the methodology that we went through in developing this capital improvement plan. So the way Arcadis does it and the way I personally like to do it is we have a methodology that's very consistent. We use that on all of our CIPs that we do for our clients. We have some Microsoft Excel-based tools that we use to do our assessments and then to also do our financial models, okay? And what we do with those tools is we turn those over to the city when this project is done. We want these CIPs to be more than just a document that gets put up on a shelf and collects dust, right? So CIPs are ever changing. We want this to be kind of this livable, this breathing document. And if we give these tools to our clients, it enables them to then move forward with the CIP, and update it on a regular basis. Our preference, I don't want to say it's going to put us out of work, but our preference is that our clients move forward with the CIPs from this point forward. We do have clients that come back after 5 or 10 years and says, hey, can you provide another update for that? And we're happy to do it. But hopefully with the tools that we provide and the report that we're giving to the city at the end of this is enough to allow you to move forward with the CIP from now through the next 20 years. So we touch on these key findings. So let's talk about the CIP for a minute. What we came up with was a $35 million capital plan, okay? And of that, there's 4 key areas that we think you need to focus in on. Out of those 4 key areas, there's 5 projects. Those 5 projects total around $25 million, okay? So that's 70% of your CIP is dedicated to these 4 key areas that we'll touch on here in just a minute. The first one being the structural deterioration. So this was some areas in the sedimentation basins, the low service suction well that feeds your raw water pumps, and then also in and around the traveling screen building, there was some deterioration that we saw on the structural framing associated with that. So these are all important key features that we think should be addressed in the short term. Obviously, when you start to get into structural deterioration, the longer you wait, the more critical those components become, and obviously the more costly they become as well. The next key area, this kind of fits in with the low service suction well. So the water comes out of your low service suction well, it gets pulled in through your low service pump station. That's what feeds to your flash mixers and your coagulation basin. From there, the water essentially moves by gravity through the entire treatment process until it gets to your high service pumps. On the low service pumps, what we see is one of the pumps is out of service. Another pump has issues maintaining flow, and that's due to the fact that the suction piping coming to it, I guess in layman's terms, it's a suction lift well. So what it does is kind of sucks the water out of the well into the pumps. Now, if everyone's familiar with a siphon, right, that requires a vacuum to make that work. But if your pipe is deteriorating where it's starting to leak, that allows air to get into that suction piping. You lose your vacuum, you lose your prime on the pump, and then it can no longer pump as well as it could, or maybe not at all. So there's some other issues with the pumps as well from vibration standpoints. We think this is a project that would coincide really well with that low service suction improvements that the deterioration that we talked about on the slide previously. If we move into the filter system, the filters have been there, obviously, for quite some time. The media has been in place for decades. What we typically see is media change-outs right around 20 to 25 years. Your media that's in those filters is right around the same vintage. You have some actuators, there are valves, the actual superstructure of the filter building, as you can see on the picture in the right, has some cracks you can see in the brickwork that's there. So things are settling a little differently than they should, right? So that's how those cracks show up. So there's some, I guess the other part of this too is filter systems are essentially the backbone of a treatment process, right? That's what guarantees your water quality as it leaves the treatment plant. You have turbidity levels, regulatory requirements that you have to meet in terms of turbidity. So you want to make sure your filters are operating as well as they can. So if we take a step back and think of those first two slides I showed you with the structural work and some of the low service pumping systems, those, at least in our opinion, are still more important than your filter system, but we still see some investments needing to be had for your filters. So our suggestion here is what you do is you cap those filters with some additional anthracite. What that does is it kind of extends the useful life of the media for a few more years, allows you maybe to delay the investment of a major capital project at the filters while you're doing some investments in some of the other infrastructure at the treatment plant. The last one here is Tollner Tank. I think everyone here, at least on the board, is familiar with Tollner Tank. It is in need of improvement, rehabilitation. There's two options there. You could replace it with a pre-stressed concrete tank, or you could rehabilitate it as is. Certainly from a cost-effective or return on investment standpoint, replacing it with a pre-stressed concrete tank makes more sense, but it obviously is more expensive from a capital investment. So some things to think about as you go forward with this. We did see some, it's wet in and around the foundation, suggesting that it may potentially be leaking. Obviously, we don't know. There wasn't a detailed investigation done to the tank as part of the CIP, but certainly something to keep an eye on as you move forward. Our suggestion here as we get into how we lay out the CIP is to move this kind of into the 5 to 10 year window. If we look at the remaining processes and systems that you have, this is kind of a laundry list. It's not all inclusive. The report really addresses everything that you see here and then some. I think the key takeaway here is your city staff has really done an excellent job with the repairs and the maintenance and maintaining operations out at the treatment plant. You have some systems that, I mean, I guess it's just like your car, right? You continue to maintain it, maintain it, maintain it. Eventually, you just have to do some rehabilitation or replacement. And that's what you saw in those previous slides. Get those other improvements done, right, on those major items that I just talked about, and then those could be readily maintained moving forward. So we talk about some of the assets. This just gives you a highlight of what we did. We looked at 211 assets. They were all inventoried and assessed. We looked at physical condition. We looked at performance conditions. We looked at redundancy, most likely failure modes, kind of pull all that in together as part of our scoring criteria and identify assets that are considered at risk versus not at risk. And then of those assets that are at risk, kind of roll those into capital projects from there. And we identified 19 individual projects. 4 of those that we identified as we worked with the city, you know, they were like, oh yeah, we're already working on that, we're already working on this. So there was 4 projects that are either in the ongoing or planning stages. We wanted to make sure those costs were included in the CIP so that budget was available to move those projects forward. This is a couple pie charts talking about kind of showing your assets. The important takeaway here again, a testament to your city staff. 3/4 of the assets that are out there are in what we consider fair, good, or excellent condition. And then also even higher than that, 83% on the process or performance side of things. That everything, those are in fair to moderate, or moderate to good to excellent conditions. Like I said, we talked about redundancy. We looked at redundancy. You have 62% of your assets there are fully redundant. There are, you see, 29% show no redundancy, but not every piece of equipment in a treatment plant needs to have full redundancy. Most of those are related to valves that you have on a piece of a pipe. So if you have a single pipe and you have a couple of valves on it, or just a single valve, those are the ones that would not have any redundancy. The next part of it was looking at the most likely failure summary. You can see physical mortality, that's just the deterioration and the degradation, and then needing to have those assets replaced moving forward. The other part of that too is level of service. So that's looking at improving or reducing operation and maintenance costs and making systems more efficient for your staff out at the treatment plant. And then lastly, as we went through the assets and we started to identify the projects, we like to always just kind of have a feel for what category those projects will fall into. And 3/4 of them fall into renewal projects. Again, as things degrade, they just need to be rehabilitated and replaced to get them back up to a level that can then be continuously maintained from there. The other one is the augmentation. That really fits back in with the level of service, you know, improving service reliability, decreasing O&M costs, and potentially increasing energy efficiencies. So all of that gets rolled up into what we title this business risk exposure matrix. So we score all of these projects, and then they get put onto this matrix where we can start to understand. I mean, it's really self-explanatory, green, yellow, and red, right? Everyone would know the red is the high priority, medium, or the yellow is medium priority, and then your green is a lower priority project. And this is what we use to start to figure out where projects should fall in that 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20 range. And that's what we get with what Bill was talking about earlier, these phase 1A and 1B. So we originally walked into this thinking we would have essentially 3 phases. One could argue we still do, but because we had those 5 large capital projects with a significant amount of investment, we just didn't see that happening all within, you know, the first few years, right? So we wanted to be able to try to spread those out over the course of 10 years versus trying to squeeze everything into 5 years. So that was moving out the filter project, trying to move out the Tolner tank project into the 5 to 10 year window, and then looking to move up and take care of those structural improvements and also the low service pumping system improvements in that 0 to 5 year window. There are some other miscellaneous projects on there. There's SCADA improvements, some additional security improvements, and then we get into those ongoing projects talking about the filter building, the structural, the superstructure of that filter building, trying to stabilize that. And then also there is the backwash drain has a pipe joint that has separated and causing issues as well. And city staff is looking to move that one forward into construction and rehabbing that. I talked about the filter media. That's the filter media addition that's capping the filters. Again, that's something that we think should be planned early on to try to delay maybe the overall filter system improvements for a few years so you can take care of some of these higher priority projects first.
Are those in priority order, which you consider most critical, as like the low service suction well structural improvements is higher to you than, say, the security and access gate?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
So what we did is we numbered the projects 1 through 19,
Right.
okay? And we kind of just followed through the treatment process as part of that. And then in here, we ended up ranking them
Okay.
specifically
So they are
on
ranked.
what we think
And
are
when you
the
think
most
they need to
important
fall into that
projects.
capital improvement
Yes,
process. Got it.
yes, correct. So I just go back there. So that was roughly $10 million. And then looking at phase 1B, you can see the cost of the filter project. It's the biggest one in the CIP. It's a massive project. It's more than just filter media. Kind of needs to be more than just filter media. You have the piping. There are the backwash pumps. There's valves. There's actuators, all in the basement there that essentially need to be upgraded in our opinion. And then in addition would be replacing what you have there now is what's called surface wash, is what you use to clean the top of your filters when you're doing a backwash. A lot of new treatment plants and any upgrades that we typically recommend for our clients would move to an air scour, which provides a better system and a better way to scrub your media and keep it clean for the long term. And then Tolner facility is listed there as well. So that's essentially the tank, right, the pre-stressed concrete tank. That's the cost we carried into that, plus some miscellaneous improvements as well from a security standpoint and a site standpoint. We thought it would be better to show this number. Obviously, it is higher. Certainly something that would have to be evaluated on the city side from an affordability standpoint, but certainly from a return on investment standpoint, the pre-stressed concrete tank seems to be a better solution for the long
What's the
term.
capacity of the Tolner tank?
4 million gallons? Right, 4 million, so, yeah. Two other things to think about with Tolner tank is that's used on a regular basis. So if you're gonna put a new tank in there, it is wetlands. So how do you build a new tank adjacent to the existing one? Are there costs associated with that? Is there ability to take that tank out of service for, essentially, I would probably say 4 to 6 months to build a new tank and build it in its same place? Or do you have to build it adjacent to try to keep the existing tank in service while you're replacing it? So thoughts like that need to be worked through on the design side, but we've also allocated some costs into this price, assuming you would be building a tank adjacent to the existing one.
Then what should the old one?
It does.
I thought so.
Yeah, it does. So then, the first two phases, essentially, $28-29 million. This last phase, you've accomplished, you've addressed those 5 major capital projects that we were talking about, the big costs, and then from here, roughly another $6 million over the course of 10 years to kind of complete what we see the rest of the improvements that you may need at the plant. Obviously, this is 10 to 20 years. Things change, but based on what we looked at and what we assessed, everything that's listed on here is going to continue to degrade over time. Obviously, it would as it gets older, and allocating some cost for that work. Traveling screen is on there, the chlorine gas system that you have. The pre-oxidation system is currently permanganate, switching over to a chlorine dioxide system, which I think would be better from a process standpoint for you long-term. There's flash mixer and your coagulation systems, some minor improvements there. Clearwell seemed to be in decent shape, so there's just a small cost associated for the Clearwell. And then you get into some operation and maintenance system improvements and then other support system improvements at the treatment plant in Erie. So that totals up. The $34.9 million is an escalated cost. So what we do is we take each project and project it over the course of the 20 years to see where it falls, and then we add, what we added for here was a 2% inflationary cost to the midpoint of construction. So if you take that back out, if you're looking at today's dollars, you're probably in the $31 million range to $32 million range. We also looked at return on investment. So this is a little bit different, I would say, than what you saw at the wastewater CIP. So wastewater plants in general are more intensive from an energy perspective, a lot more equipment. What you have at your drinking water facilities, you have some raw water pumps, again, that pump it up to your flash mixer, and then you have some high service pumps at the back end that pump it out into the system. A lot less equipment, and then also on the residual side, your wastewater system processes all the residuals for the wastewater plant and your drinking water plant. At drinking water, all we need to do is pump it into the sewer and send it down to the wastewater plant. So we did find roughly $50,000 in annual savings on energy and fuel and operation and maintenance savings. So that works out to $1 million over 20 years, which is real money, but it's certainly not as much as you saw, right, on the wastewater side. Just a couple more slides here. We talk about the financial model. So we sat down with the accounting department with Amanda and Bill and Dave and Chelsea and a few others, kind of went through the cash flow projections, our e-forecast model, which is an Excel-based tool that Amanda will have moving forward, and then she can use that to help her with budgeting for any capital improvement plans or projects that you want to move forward. She did have a few comments, but I know she's on leave, so we're going to wait until she comes back, sit down with her again, address all of her comments, and then have the final version of the model in her hands, hopefully in early June, hopeful for that. But in terms of a cash flow projection, what this is over the course of the 20 years, you can see, starting with, again, these are just our recommendations, but starting with the structural improvements and also the low service pump station improvements, getting those taken care of early on in the 20 to 22 year range. And then there's a little bit of a lull there while you start to then get ramped up for those next two big projects, which would be your filter system upgrades and then Betoner tank. And that takes you through the 2025 to 2029 range. After that, things taper off, and now you're down, say, the $1 million to the $500,000 range or less, moving into the latter half of the CIP. On next steps, just some recommendations of what we think would be the next steps here would be, once you've had a chance to review the CIP report, I think we would ask to have that approved. What that does is that helps us and helps the city with grant applications moving forward. There's through the New York State DWSRF, their WIA, so that's the Water Infrastructure Investment Act. That's for both wastewater and water system improvements. On the drinking water side, it's much more favorable than wastewater side. So on wastewater, it's a 25% grant for the eligible cost. On drinking water, it's 60%, up to $3 million. So just quick math, if you had a $5 million capital project, New York State potentially could cover $3 million of it as a grant, not even a low interest loan, and then the city would be responsible for the $2 million, with that potentially being covered through low interest loans through the DWSRF program. So actually, it's a really, really good program. As part of that, there are engineering reports and other applications that need to be completed. The deadline for those grant applications, it was September 7th, 2018 for the previous round. I talked to Bernie Rotelli, your grants administrator, and then we had some conversations with EFC, who administers the DWSRF program. They think that deadline is going to be later in the year in 2019, if not November, December, potentially into early 2020. So that's all good news, right? Because right now we're in May, in June, we can move forward and start to get some things ready for these grant applications. Because I think, now's the time. I don't think we're going to see this type of percentages in the future. They have this act set up. It was set up in 2017. I think they're talking about 2 more rounds. And then after that, who knows what happens. But right now, there are 2 more rounds. There's going to be one this year, and then obviously one a year and a half after this next round of grants closes sometime later this year. I think there could be an opportunity there to pull NYSERDA in as well from a flex tech standpoint and start to look at some energy efficiency improvements. And also in that regard, NYSERDA covers some of the costs for any of the reports that you need to have generated for these WIA grants. And then aside from that, whether the city decides to go after these grants or not, I think at a bare minimum, you really should think about moving forward on those structural improvements to the sedimentation basins and a low service suction well. I think that's, out of everything that we looked at, those are the most important ones, and certainly should be kind of priority number 1 moving forward. So that's all I have. I don't know if there's any questions now,
Well,
or?
I wanted to say thanks to Bill, because we don't know what we don't know until you go and dig deep into the process. And I think that's really critical. Capital improvement, strategic planning, strategic outlook is the only way to go for a project like this. So I appreciate that. And I also make a comment, because I was involved in this team, that there's no surprises here. And I don't know if you felt like you saw a surprise.
No.
Okay. I didn't.
We were all aware.
Yeah. And I didn't see-
Family was aware. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask you that question.
No surprises.
Yeah.
Due to the age of this facility versus wastewater, even the oldest part of wastewater was 1956. This goes back to 1886, December 24th, when they first started pumping raw water out of the river through a wooden, which we still have, intake, 48-inch intake, and pump raw water to people's homes. In fact, we just dug up a pipe today, and we saw the old wooden main right next to it at Christiana and Lincoln right here, because we had to correct the valve situation over there. So it was pretty cool. I showed the mayor the picture. And the the pipe was from, or the valve in the piping was 1905, and we know the wooden main was obviously in the 1800s. So that's what we're dealing with here, and a lot of this is, we had improvements done in 1917, I think 1922 was a big one, and 1955, Dave, 56? 57, I'm sorry. Sometimes I get the plants mixed up. But so it was 57 over there, those were the big ones, 22 and 57 were the big additions.
Right.
So that's when a lot of this took place, that's still pretty old. And so we're not surprised at all, as we were with the generator project, when the costs escalated due to the old electronics. We were hooking up to 1957 electronics with a brand new generator, which we really can't do. So we had to go through that. So be aware that that's also being done as we're going along. You guys have already approved that part. We actually went up to bid Monday, or put everything out Monday, so, for that project. So a lot of this is going on. Some of these projects are already moving, like he said. So don't be so scared about that price tag just yet.
Sure.
I think we got some of these things already in the works, and we're working on them, and we're getting through them. So that is, I hate to say worst case scenario, but they did a very good job. I thought Arcadis did an excellent job of their cost projections and their analysis. It was very realistic. It was nice having Chelsea on board. She's done 12 years of this in her prior job.
Right.
Water, wastewater stuff, so it was really helpful having her on board. And Dave and I, we've gone to enough seminars on different things, and we're not surprised by what we're seeing.
Right.
Everybody's going through this, so anyway,
Thanks for that. Thanks, Chelsea.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's an excellent job by everybody.
And thank
It's
you
a-
for
it's a big
recognizing the staff, maintaining this and, repairing it all these years. 1956 and 1886?
1886, December 24th, I think, when they first started pumping over there. But, you know, obviously things were added as they went along, but still, it's very old stuff.
I think one of the valves in the downstairs of the Martin
1880s,
1888 was a.
I believe it is. It's stamped on there. You can see it.
That's on the suction pipe into your raw water.
Correct, that's
All
okay.
that pumps.
And it's still there, and it's still working, so, you know, it's, the guys have done a great job keeping that going over all the years, past staff and current staff, so they do a great job keeping it going, so, as do the wastewater people. A good group. Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, thanks a lot for your time, thanks for listening, thanks for supporting us and letting us move forward with the studies. Next, we have April Camp and Amber Holy Cross regarding the National Grid Transfer Station renaming.
I think it's this thing, therapy. You swapped out?
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I think most people know me. I'm Ray Profrak, 202 Niagara Street in North Tonawanda. And
Kristen Derby, 98 Niagara Street.
we are both members of the Historic Preservation Commission. Kristen is not quite a member yet. She's our secretary, but I think she's going to take my place when I retire from the board this year. I'm not going far. I still want to be there as an advisor. But it's time for the young people of our community to take over, and we're really excited that that's happening on this commission. So we're here tonight to ask you to approve an action that we took actually, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, and we just kind of lost track of it.
Was that the 2014?
5 years ago.
5 years ago. Oh, April Gamble is here also. Not April. I'd like April to talk about that, but first, if you would have 2 or 3 minutes, I'd like to take you on a mental journey. People hear historic preservation, and it doesn't always have a positive image. So I'd like to kind of set the stage for what the Historic Preservation Board Commission is, and mostly why we're there. what our mission is. So I'd like to take you on a journey to different parts of our city. So if you would pretend, please, I think most of you either grew up in NT or you've lived here a long time, so I think you can do this. If you would pretend that you had moved away and had been gone for many years, at least 10, maybe more, and you were just returning for the first time in a long time. So drive down Memorial Highway, the Division Street Highway, and think, what is the first structure that you see that says, now I'm home? What do you see?
The graph?
Good. Now another one, a little
The
bit
National
better.
Grid building.
Yes,
Is that?
which we call the transfer station now. And that's pretty much on that street. That's what you see.
That was the answer.
So I was right.
So I
Even
was,
though you
I
were
mean, I'm
making
kind
fun
of
of me.
right,
I was-
but
I
it
would've
was
said the-
right.
I would've said the hospital.
The hospital first.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's for Simi come to, and there's more than one. Hopefully, we have more than one.
But for the record, the correct
Building.
answer was mine, right?
Oh, okay. So, you know, we really should have gone down Niagara Falls Boulevard first. Let's do that. Let's go down Niagara Falls Boulevard, the North Tonawanda section,
Wurlitzer building.
the Wurlitzer Building, obviously. And certainly you feel home when you see that. So now let's drive down Payne Avenue. There are obviously more than one. What do you see down Payne Avenue that says, I'm home?
Lowry,
The pool.
Lowry.
Lowry. Pool.
The pool. Even Mid-City Plaza,
Yeah.
to some extent.
Been around.
If you think about it, it's been there a long time. Yeah. I guess we could drive down Oliver Street. What do you see down Oliver Street?
Ours.
Bars. If we hadn't torn down Ironton School, I'm sure you would have said that. These are iconic buildings in our city. To me, that's what the word iconic means. The buildings that you've always looked at, always admired, or at least wondered about, and they say home to you. That's the purpose of the Historic Preservation Commission, is to preserve not necessarily just individual buildings, but communities within our community, neighborhoods within our community. Preserve the character and the culture of our city. So that's what we're trying to do. So what was it, 5 years ago? We did have a public hearing, and the commission placed what you call the Niagara Mohawk building is really called the transfer station. Named it as a local landmark. But the next step is for the council to approve that naming, and then it has to be filed in the county. April, do you have any more information?
Do you want to tell the story of the transfer building and how
It's
it's significant?
Oh, okay.
Well, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, what is your most identifiable thing that tells you?
That this is an
that
important
this is-
building?
This is historical, yes. As a group.
How many of you know about the 1905 Festival of Lights in Buffalo? That's not exactly what it was called.
Pan American.
Pan American.
It was really 1903, wasn't it?
Was it 3? Thank you, historian. I'm not really good with dates, never was. My husband's a social studies teacher. Never liked dates. It would not have happened. It would not have been lit up except for the existence of the transfer building at the corner of Robinson and the highway.
Because of Tesla.
Yes. So the power coming from Niagara Falls had to go through that building, and then it was transferred, or I don't know, perhaps enhanced, or whatever it did, and it reached Buffalo and lit up Buffalo, and continued to make then Buffalo what it became, a really major city. So it's a truly historic and very special building. We should get it listed on the National Register as well as our own local register. The importance of naming it to the local register is that it would have to go through an extensive review process before it could be torn down. And so it protects us from losing this iconic building in our city. It's so well known in the field of historic preservation and the field of the history of electricity, that when we visited the, oh gosh, not Tesla, who's the other, Edison. We visited the Thomas Edison workshop, I guess it was, and his complex in Fort Myers, Florida. What? I think it's called Menlo Park. Right on the wall above his work desk was a picture of this building. So it truly is. I think Dale Marshall has a great amount of history of this building. He really has a lot of information about it. He may even have a picture in his office of it. So we are asking that you approve the action of the Historic Preservation Commission to name the transfer building to as a local historic landmark. And then we need $30 to take it to the county to register it.
You're gonna break the bank.
We think it's 30, it's probably going up there. Anyone want to say anything else?
I would just like to add that May is Preservation Month, so it's a very fitting time to approve this. Preservation Month was expanded upon of Preservation Week, which was signed into law by President Nixon in 1973. So it's a great time to remember what we have in our community and what we can build from that.
And if there are any young people in the audience who are interested in the history of our city and want to become involved, we would welcome your at least attendance at some of our meetings and anything else you might like to do to become involved.
I'd just like to highlight, Ray and I served on the tourism committee for the chamber, and that building is on the tour listing for the town office. And we have a plaque out there, and you can go to has a Bentley code that you can call up and see it doing that. Sorry about the feedback.
It's all right.
There was one thing brought up in your minutes here, is the one gentleman asked if there would be some sort of a tour for people, since it would be a historic, declared eventually a historic site. Would there be a possibility that the public could tour it? And I
I
didn't
think
see
that's something we would love to
Yeah,
do or to sponsor, but it would certainly be up to Niagara Mohawk if they would allow people to.
It's a private building.
Yeah, it's, it's independently owned. I would like to say that at the hearing, there was a representative from Niagara Mohawk
Yeah,
in
Ken
attendance,
Pajot,
and he really didn't raise any objections.
Right.
So if you had that in your
And
mind,
he's gonna be, it looked like he said they would keep the upkeep of it going on,
yes,
going forward.
I
So,
think so.
all right, thank you.
If we could get it on the National Register, that ought to be a slam dunk, basically.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it would take to clean up the property. Probably a lot.
Just keep the flea markets on.
But it would be a great restaurant.
Yes, it
It's a
would.
really cool
It
building.
is
My
a
son and
very
I, used to drive past when he was younger, and we had a name for it. We called it Zappers, and we had a whole menu and all the different parts. We had electrical names to it. But in today's world of beer breweries and restaurants, that could be a really perfect one. It would be. So maybe someday someone will come along who is interested in doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
By my mistake, I left Mike Zimmerman off the agenda today, even though he did submit his letter to me in plenty of time. So he's gonna come up and speak on the topic regarding economic development.
How you doing, Mike?
Good evening. Thank you for squeezing me in. I'll try to keep it brief. So I hope we've had a chance to look at the letter that I did submit, but I'll summarize it quickly. For the fourth year running now, Governor Cuomo's office has announced the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, or DRI. It's a $100 million statewide program wherein each each economic development region, and there's 10 regions, have the opportunity to award a $10 million award to one city of their choosing in their region to support downtown economic development. In the past 3 years in Western New York, the cities of Jamestown, Olean, and most recently Lockport have been the successful winners of the award. Though 2 years ago, or going on 2 years ago at this point, we were fortunate enough to be selected for kind of a, I hate to use the term consolation prize, but a secondary award of $2.5 million of what they call smart growth community funding. And that's, you can see that at work right now with the projects going on at Gateway Harbor and other projects downtown. So this year, it was just announced a few weeks ago. It's a very short turnaround process. Applications are due May 31st, so we're only basically 2 weeks away from application submission date. And there's been some discussions in the past couple of weeks with our partners across the canal in the city of Tonawanda about the viability of a joint application between the two communities. And you know, the more we started to flesh it out, both communities have recently completed downtown development plans, local waterfront revitalization plans. Our downtowns really are historically and still today kind of one downtown. There's just a body of water in between. But what we share in Gateway Harbor, what we share in the Erie Canal, and the investments that have been made by the state of New York in both our downtowns in recent years, Tonawanda following 1 year behind us, just this past year was recently awarded the same $2.5 million Smart Growth Community Award. So it started to make a lot of sense that there's a lot of momentum and a lot of assets to leverage to make a compelling application jointly for the $10 million DRI submission. So essentially what the letter I'm putting forward here and requesting is just that authorization to submit an application for the DRI for this year, May 31st, jointly with our partners in Tonawanda.
Mike, hello. One of the council people in Tonawanda called me and asked if we had spoken on this yet, so I'm glad you're bringing it up. What are some of the projects that sort of tie us both in together? The way we're gonna submit it, I would imagine a lot of them have to do with sort of the water in between us, right? Or not necessarily?
Yes and no. There's a lot of potential projects, some of which are independent on our side, some are independent on Tonawanda's side. We are trying to, as we're kind of developing the application, focus on potential linkages between the two with our bike path systems. Obviously, the improvements both cities are making at Gateway Harbor and around there, and what else we could do in those areas where we do connect. We've talked about, jointly doing like a joint Wi-Fi program that would cover both sides of the canal and things like that. So there's a lot of joint ideas, but it is important, I should point out, that everything that's put into a DRI application, we're mining project ideas out of our development plans to populate that application. But upon award of the funds, that would be in probably like August, September, that time frame. There then enters into about a 6-month process where New York State, they, as part of the award, assign a consulting firm to the community, and they spend a very intensive kind of 6-month period determining how the funds are going to get spent and what projects are and are not going to get funded. So that, for example, Lockport was awarded last year. They're just at the stage now, 12 months later, where they have an idea of what projects are going to get funded.
Okay,
So
that makes sense.
I think it's important to realize that we have a very mature process. Lumber City Development Corporation has been through this process the last 3 years alone. And this year we determined that Empire State Development is probably ready for a regional approach. And not so much that we are gonna connect the two cities together,
Right.
as it is we're gonna offer up our individual products, but as one cohesive plan going forward in the region for Empire State to
Right.
look at in more of an appropriate design than what we've done in the past. as
I think it's a
standalone.
great idea, I mean, that's really
Yeah,
what
right.
the state wants to see, is
Right,
sort of municipalities working together.
Yeah.
But not all projects are gonna be.
No, right, some individual stuff,
Yes,
but at
a
least
lot
some
of individual
cohesion of,
stuff, yes.
you know, like the
Yeah.
Wi-Fi would be a
Yeah.
great example. The other question I have is, so there's some upfront costs. Say we did get it, there are upfront costs, right, to sort of, they pay us back, basically, right? Is the way it works, or do they automatically give you the money upfront?
In my understanding, it's neither. The way I understand the DRI program to work is that $10 million award is essentially a commitment from the state of $10 million of funds through whichever funding streams are most appropriate for the projects that they ultimately come out of. So they don't come out of one pot of money that gets, deposited into the account or something. If we get through that planning process and we determine that there's a streetscape project, DOT will give us some money. If we determine there's an affordable housing project,
So it goes
Homes
to-
Community Renewal will give us some money. So it's very much yet to be determined.
Right, and it's also important to understand that like when we got the $2.5 million, people are coming back and said, why did so-and-so get the money? The state determines the projects they pick that you have put on the list. It may have been our last priority, but the state said, that's the one we
Yeah.
want you to do. And so our hands are tied,
Yeah.
but as long as we advertise it and say we wanna do this, the state says, yes, you can do that.
Right.
And you can't do the first three top that you have because we don't think it's as important as these other ones.
Because we had to go back, right, and basically negotiate
Yeah.
what they wanted and what
Right.
we wanted.
Well,
So,
I think it's important because the public was confused on, well, I hope the government doesn't squander it in something silly. There's no way for that to happen. There's checks and balances so that
Yeah.
make
we have
recommendations.
to earmark that money
Right.
for something that's listed. And they obviously, New York State thought the projects we turned in were worthwhile in giving us the money. So, just so there's no confusion.
So one other question, and I could be mistaken, but recently, did Tonawanda get some amount of money and that they didn't end up going through with it because they didn't want to pay the upfront costs?
Not that I'm aware
It's
of. It's
not-
possible, but not
okay.
that I'm aware of.
That was a discussion at one point. So what if, in a scenario, so either way, there's no upfront cost, really, it goes through a different source. So even if, say, one of the municipalities didn't have the money upfront, it doesn't matter, because that will be awarded that funding
Right.
regardless. Okay, so all I was thinking, if they were unable to pay their portion,
Right.
what would happen,
You're
right? But
yeah.
that's not a scenario, then,
Right.
so, okay, great.
I don't understand is that someone from Tonawanda asking you those questions?
Yeah, that was just some discussion about city of town. We're doing great, but, I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
So good,
Absolutely move forward.
yeah, good job, Mike.
We have nothing to lose.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, let's proceed with that. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
That's all we had on the agenda.
Okay. Why don't you go through your general discussion first?
For my general discussion topics, I have received a few communications. I'm gonna read this one first because, they've done this in the past, I think. But this is from Susan Tadaro, from the Downtown Merchants Association. We are requesting permission to hold an event on Webster Street on Thursday nights beginning in August for 4 to 6 weeks. Our event is called Thursdays on Webster. We are requesting use of 4 to 5 feet from the rear of the vehicle on the curbside of the sidewalk. We have mapped out 25 to 30 parking spaces with no trees or planters obstructing the space. There would be no artisans in front of Canal Club 62, the Riviera Theater, or Dwyer's, as the space does not allow for people traffic. We do not intend to close the street, only mark off 25 to 30 spaces for artisan trunk sale. The trunk sale is designed for the artisan to sell their handmade goods from the trunk or rear of their vehicle. They may need a table behind the vehicle for wrapping or small displays. Along with the trunk sale, our shops will be open later and some of our restaurants will have wine and beer tastings. The plan will also include artist painting and acoustic music in the park by Webster's Bistro. The event is designed to draw folks from the food trucks over the bridge to explore Webster Street. We are also enlisting the help of the Huff and Pedal Bike located here in North Tonawanda to ferry folks back and forth from Tonawanda to North Tonawanda and back again. We would also need assistance with the use of traffic cones and signage to mark off spaces for each weekly event. Our staff will be marking off the spaces. We appreciate your consideration for our event and look forward to your input. And if anybody is interested, she is more than willing to come in and speak.
Yeah, I think that the last time we kind of just were talking about an email or something that she gave us, we asked her to come in, to just, in case we had some questions about this event, because I know they were trying to do some things on there in a different capacity, and she had concerns, so I just wanted to.
Yeah,
She
and
met with the chief.
She did, she met with the
Yeah.
fire
Chief
department and the
Sikora
police.
and-
She did get, yeah, she did meet with both, and she submitted the, or
Department of Public Works.
originally, she didn't ask, she didn't submit a formal request to come in and speak today, so it was pretty late, and that's why I said we can just talk about it, so if you guys want her to come in, then she can.
Right, she had talked to me about it, and she wanted to, and she went through the proper channels to talk to Chief of Police and, Chief Cora. So I don't, from what my understanding, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's a great idea,
I think
we
it's a
just
cool
talked
idea,
about connecting the two cities, and here's an event that's gonna do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that sounds fine, I just know that we have another event on Thursdays, and I just wanna make sure, as long as they say we have the resources to coordinate the cones and the Webster Street, and also do, Thursdays at Gratwick, that's fine with me.
Yeah, the downtown merchants are all on board with this and are all supportive, and I'm supportive of getting this project done.
Okay.
Good.
Next I have from St. Mark's Episcopal Church. Dear members of the Common Council, St. Mark's Episcopal Church in North Tonawanda is looking to host its 6th St. Mark's Get Set Go 5K race on Saturday, October 12, 2019. As in previous years, the race is scheduled to start at 9 a.m., rain or shine, with runners beginning on Tremont Street on the side of St. Mark's Church and ending back at our church. And they did attach a map, which I can distribute to all of you. Members of the church will post notices throughout the affected neighborhoods prior to the race, advising the residents of the race, and will be removed immediately afterwards. If approved, I will contact Captain Karen Smith to see if the North Tonawanda Police Department will be able to supervise the race. She has assisted in the past and has been a great help to us and the runners. We are looking forward to the opportunity of working with her and the support of the officers again. Therefore, St. Mark's Episcopal Church is respectfully requesting the approval of the Common Council to run this race again this year and be granted permission to have a police escort during the race for the protection of our runners and bystanders. As in the past, we have seen a significant increase in the number of runners and walkers and are confident this race will draw more and more people to the community each year. Many of the participants inquired of our volunteers where they could go to eat after the race. This proves it is a positive event for both our parish community and the business community of North Tonawanda. Should you require any further information, you may contact the coordinators of this event, Katie Orlowski Williams at, and then she lists her number. On behalf of St. Mark's Episcopal Church, I would like to thank you for your time and consideration of our request and await to hear from the Honorable Council in the near future. And again, she did attach a route map here, so if anybody wants to see this, you're more than welcome.
But it's been the same, so.
Okay.
Can you put that in the next one?
Sure. Next, dear members of the Common Council and Mayor Pappas, on behalf of the Carousel Society and Niagara County Legislator Rich Andres, we are planning the 3rd Children's 4th of July Parade. This event has become very popular and has been a huge success. I request from the city a couple of items for this day listed below. Permission to march down Thompson Street from Pinewoods Park to the Carousel Museum. There will be adult supervision on the march and monitor the parade. No parking spaces be posted the day before along the parade route. Assistance from our North Tonawanda Police and Auxiliary Police at each of the intersections. The children and families participating in the parade will be given free admission to the museum. Tickets will be provided to the children for free rides at the carousel. We look forward to another successful Children's 4th of July Parade. Thank you for your consideration on this request.
No problem with that.
No problem with that. Finally, dear Common Council, on July 18th, the Boys and Girls Clubs of the North Towns will be celebrating the 33rd Annual Canal Fest 4 Miler. This year we are moving the start-finish line back to its original location near the corner of Main and Sweeney Streets. To ensure the safety of our runners, we are requesting that Sweeney Street be closed for traffic from Main Street to 1202 Sweeney Street, where the 2-mile turnaround is located. We are requesting that the street closure be in effect from 6:30 until 8 p.m. The race starts at 7 p.m. Enclosed, you'll find the certification, which includes the map of the course. Again, just an event. I just going through the proper channels, asking for police assistance and request with the appropriate map. Very helpful.
Right,
Yeah. Anybody have any problem with that?
I have no problem with that.
No.
And that is all that I have.
I have, at least one item. Mark or Donna, do you have any items for general discussion?
No, I do not tonight.
Bob, do you have any?
Yes, I do. If you noticed, I'm wearing a Neighborhood Watch T-shirt that Goodwill Ambassador Mark gave me today, so I thought I'd publicize an event they're having tomorrow at the Market on the Square. The Neighborhood Watch will be out there from 5:30 to about 8:30. They'll let the public know what they're all about, and if you get a chance to go visit them at their table, they have some raffle items. They've actually got some Bills tickets and other things like that they're raffling off. So good idea to go out there and learn more about the Neighborhood Watch. Their meetings are monthly, and they're moving from the Redeemer Lutheran Church to the library to kind of make themselves more centrally located in the future, but a great organization. And I wanted to highlight, since Mark gave me the shirt, he also had an article published in the Ampol Eagle, which is a big newspaper in the Polish community.
Really?
And Musical Mark is NT's Goodwill Ambassador, written by Matthew Kirshner, so I'll pass that down for you to take a look at that. Wonderful stuff going on with our Goodwill Ambassador. And the final thing is, Donna and I are involved in this Kaboom Playground building. If you haven't seen anything about Kaboom, or you want to know more about Kaboom, ask me, I know all about it. And we're actually going to build a playground at Mayor's Park for a population that's really underserved in that area of the city. And we're getting a grant from the Kaboom Corporation along with Ralph Wilson Foundation to help finance that. They've already raised the amount of funds that we needed on the GoFundMe page. So, but we're always looking for more exciting incentives to put
Right.
forward in the playground itself. So
Let's partner.
if you haven't heard about Kaboom, come up here and ask me about it.
Right.
It's a great initiative, and thank Donna
And
for
partnering
being
up
involved
with,
in that.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield.
Yeah, Blue Cross Blue Shield, we're also a big, major sponsor for us.
Before you move on, because I forgot to mention this, with the hub for services that we're creating here,
Yes.
I don't think we talked about the fact that last week was the first Passport Piscine Day, and it was like hugely successful. It was nonstop all day. I think it was 4 hours, and there wasn't even a lull for 5 minutes. There was people in and out all day, and there was a line
The
actually.
passport and pistol permit are taken off. Our legal services are getting so overwhelmed
Yes.
that they need a printer because of the services that they provide our residents. And we're having a big hub for services associated with the Parks Department that Mark and I work on. And we are gonna have a summer blast-off event at Payne Park, at Memorial Pool, next month, or
June 21st.
June 21st. It'll be another thing where we are directly bringing services to residents so they don't have to search out for it.
Yeah, so those services are really,
They're really critical and needed. Thank you. That's all I have.
Austin, did you have anything?
Yeah, so I talked to Bob and Mark a little bit about this. The PACE program, which we approved the municipal agreement, there's like a part 2 of it that is the local law that just needs to be included within it. I think it was a little oversight, whether or not it was included in the original agreement. So it doesn't change anything that we already voted on. It's the way it's worded is it basically gives the city the authority to provide the financing. So I'll pass it to everyone again. I sent it out a few times, and Luke also has it. But I was hoping to just finalize that, get it on Tuesday's
I thought we were
agenda.
providing the financing.
No, it's allowing us, like the city just allowing us. It's similar to what Niagara County just passed, that they have
You
the
just said that it
agreement.
allows the city the
We-
authority to provide the financing.
Yes,
That's what
but
you said.
we're not, there's no services, we're not taking any liability, it's still the same same agreement that I had spoken about prior. So the city doesn't have to hire anyone, we don't have to
So we're
administer
not
anything.
providing the finances.
We are not hiring anyone to provide the finances, it's just saying that we as a municipality are offering this program to citizens or business owners in, North Tonawanda. So it's,
I know, I'm just a little bit confused because you just said that it is allowing the city the authority to provide
but
the
it's,
finances.
right, so we're providing the service, but we're not providing the program, we're not handing it to people. We're providing the service, but the EIC is the one administering it.
So we're allowing the service,
Right.
which will fund these loans.
Right, we're providing the service, but we're not administering it, I guess is.
What service are we providing?
We're providing the PACE program, which allows people low-interest financing for clean energy improvements. Okay?
So we'll
And,
just,
and I did send that documentation to
can
you
we
as well.
just have Luke send that so it makes it to the agenda for Tuesday?
Yeah, is he's sick?
He said he was at work.
Is he gonna be
today.
here tomorrow?
That I don't know.
So it's just nothing changes, other than just sort of a part two of it that wasn't
An
included
amendment?
initially.
I know, I just
Right.
the wording of it, I was a little confused because we're not actually doing anything with
And
this,
this-
just allowing it to happen.
Okay. So, and then the other piece too, I still haven't received any information on the, rates and healthcare that we passed last week.
I have an update on that.
Could you, cause I had a few questions.
Sure. I'll get into that unless there's something else that you wanna talk about.
Well, so with that, it's, Matt, you gave me an explanation on it. It
Well, I
has,
gave you an explanation on what the late communication was. and why
which we passed.
Right.
Right, so we created an extension basically so we could look for more competitive rates with another broker, right? So my question with that is, does our healthcare currently restrict us to a certain provider?
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Well, the union contracts. do.
right, so, yeah, right, they would have to be negotiated and so on, I understand that you can't just get rid of a certain type of healthcare. So why do we have a broker that would, in theory, find competitive healthcare when we're obligated to only offer one healthcare?
Because you will not get the same rates if you do not go through a broker, which there are basically only two of in this area.
They have a certain amount of members, they can help assign and defray the risks involved with high expenditures in a plan or a catastrophic illness. For instance, Lawley, we looked at Lawley because Amanda and Art had said, let's look into some other options. We looked into, the last few years, we've looked into what we have, what we're being provided, what our contracts say, and, they looked into Lawley, we met with Lawley several times, with Amanda, they were drawing up a projected savings, and then we said, well, we wanna compare, you know, this to that, and get an exact type of, landscape of it. When they first came across, we started the whole process because Crown came out with about a 12% increase, which is quite considerable on our healthcare. So we immediately started talking to Lawley because Amanda said they're the only other outfit that can service us because we not only need to be Blue Cross Blue Shield for our union contracts for the medical, but we also need to be Blue Cross and Blue Shield for the prescription. And one of our unions is in negotiation, CSEA, so we needed to kind of find out what Lawley could bring to the table.
So have we ever tried to negotiate competitive healthcare without a broker?
Directly with the insurance
Right.
provider, yes, that's what you would never, you could not get the same rates. And Amanda did look into that. It would, because it's a pretty obvious question, why would we go through these brokers? And the answer is, you will not get even close to the same rates as you would if you worked with one of these brokers because they service so many.
Yeah, and not only that, the heavy
Well,
lifters too.
the
better rate.
So the broker, though, when they help us with the rates,
Mhm.
really, they get like 10, 20, 30, how much of a fee do they collect?
There was a difference of when we boiled down to what the administration cost from Crown is versus what the administration of the plan would be from Raleigh. It was a difference between $150,000 for Crown, $120,000 for Raleigh.
That's how much goes in their pocket?
That's how much it costs now. That includes, issuing the cards, dealing with changes throughout the year, things that our offices could not possibly do, where a broker helps us out, plus run the numbers and analyze our cost and our performance of the plan. So there's things that a broker does that we don't even have the manpower to
Well, I mean,
find out what the
could-
data would be.
in theory, couldn't someone who was hired for HR to cover a few topics also administer healthcare
In
at a
theory,
lower price
but
than
in theory, if you,
120,000?
let's say you hired somebody at even 50 grand a year, you're talking of an additional cost of over $100,000 with benefits and stuff like that anyways.
Well,
So really
benefits
the,
would be about $30,000.
it's, okay,
Well,
it's,
You'd have to be an expert in insurance.
right, and they would have to be an insurance
Right.
expert. So,
But it could cover a few things in the city, not just healthcare, if we had someone who was HR.
Well, we do have HR people up in the accounting office.
Well, yeah, and they got a lot of work, right? And really, the accounting office shouldn't be dealing with healthcare. I mean, she does, and she does a great job, but there's a lot of pieces. So, but moving back, so we're hiring a broker to broker one healthcare, and that makes sense.
Yeah, for 323 members, city workers, retirees. They also help guide our retirees through the benefits, through the plan.
And Blue Cross doesn't do that? They don't have those services if you just hire directly through them?
no, they're not a broker, they're the insurance.
They're the
Right.
insurance.
Yeah.
But
you
but
can't-
they don't have anyone on staff that could help employees
But
make
we don't,
decisions?
we don't pay them to be a broker, that's not what they do, they don't have some,
They provide healthcare, I would imagine they provide some sort of service that would help people sort of figure out what the best
We
like
plan
a
for them
broker.
is.
like a broker.
But then we don't have to pay the broker, we're already paying Blue Cross, now we're also paying a broker, when we
You're
could just be paying Blue Cross
You're
and
right. It would-
maybe have those services just through Blue Cross instead of the broker.
Yes, that,
It
that
just seems like
option
we're
was-
giving more money away.
Yes, that, you're right, Austin.
We
The
are
option,
giving more money.
trust me, if the option was possible to just negotiate directly with Blue Cross as our city, we couldn't do it. Can you do it? Are you a healthcare expert?
No one's giving me any numbers to
Well, I was
anything,
gonna
no
talk about a
paperwork
few
on it.
things,
I
but
mean,
you wanted to ask the questions
Okay.
before.
I think it's just something we have to think about, you know, if we're paying a broker, just
Yeah.
to broker one specific healthcare.
Here's
you know.
the thing, if you were a group with all the same benefits, could you go to Blue Cross Blue Shield and say, hey, here, how do I do this? How does this work? How does this benefit work? The problem is we have 5 different unions, and there's a lot of variability when it comes to what their contract says versus what, say, AFSCME says, or what PBA says, or what CSEA says. So Blue Cross Blue Shield does not get involved with contract
Negotiations, that's what the broker.
and that's what the broker, and both of these brokers have said, they will be, part of, helping us manage the costs and also to advise us when we talk to those unions. And I think that's a missing piece that you really can't ask from an HR rep, prior to.
Also, are there
Personal-
any other municipalities that don't use a broker?
I don't know exactly, but I was told there's yes and no to that.
Okay, you can't answer a question with yes unless you can tell me the answer to the
We
question.
vote on stuff, but I'm
So,
looking at it, so.
I don't, right, that's why I'm asking the question, and I don't, from what I understand, almost, from what they're telling us, all municipalities go through one of these two.
From what the broker that we're hiring is telling us, they're telling us
Well,
that
not just the one
everyone
we
uses
hired,
brokers.
The other, also the other
I
one.
mean,
we
if
were
I was a
considering.
broker, I would say, yeah, everyone uses brokers.
So let me give you a little bit of what, you're asking a lot of questions, but let's present some information that you were asking about, you weren't giving any numbers, you said. So Crown Benefits, you know, they didn't give us our rates till April 18th, which was well late, but that's when they got their rates from Blue Cross Blue Shield. There was a push to get us to May 1st, they wanted us to sign off. It starts, the coverage starts July 1st, to July 1st. So we were trying to, because we were kind of alarmed with the 12% increase, we wanted to meet, we wanted to talk, we called Blue Cross Blue Shield, we talked to Lawley, And there were things that Lolly, when it all came down, it was very attractive in the first presentation of what the savings was to me and Amanda and Art, and just listening to what they had to say. However, when it came down to what these plans do for the unions and for the workers, and what we get from Crown, Lolly couldn't match. When it came down to our talks, we were able to get from 12% to 4.68%, and I asked Lolly what the best they could do, and the best they could do was 6%. And with Lolly, their big hurdle was they needed the unions to sign off, and we couldn't have CSEA sign off on a new plan and a new acknowledgement because they're still in negotiations. And as far as I know, Matt weren't able to do that, didn't agree to do that.
But Lolly and Crown, again, are brokers, the plan is still Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? So, and negotiate, so anytime we're in negotiations, we can't sign off on a new plan, but what's the new plan? Blue Cross didn't,
So the plan that they would have, what they were asking was that, I don't wanna say anything that
well, that's what I want
I
written
know.
down.
So, hold on, let me finish answering your question. There were two options to go through Lolly. There was a good option, which the best option was the 6% option. There were two options. One had Blue Cross as the prescription provider, and one had
Self-insured or
independent
self,
health.
okay.
The better option, still, which was not as low as what Crown was offering. It was close, but not even as low. That's what would have required them to go through independent health for the prescription and then require the union to sign off on it. So what everybody needs to remember, especially you, is if anybody walked in, well, you're the only one here asking any questions.
Well, because I wasn't providing any information, meeting minutes,
Please let me finish.
contracts.
If you came into City Hall at any point in the last month, you would have seen representatives from both Crown and Lolly in and out of this building every single day.
Right, but I can't be
for
here
hours.
24/7.
You
It's not capable.
So,
Yeah,
right, but what you need to remember is that a lot of people here worked very hard to get those numbers to where
Sure.
they are, and that wouldn't have happened if they didn't go through that long
Right.
process. So this is the single best
So
option.
Matt, what you need to remember is as city clerk, you need to provide us with that information, which you have not done.
It's not I don't even have the information to provide you with.
How are you
Austin,
talking about it then?
Because I sat in on the meetings. I was there for that.
I mean, meeting
I don't even
minutes,
have that.
contracts, a breakdown. It's
Okay,
just,
don't blame this on me when you asked the city attorney's office countless times for this and didn't get it. So don't try to put it on
well,
me
I
right
asked
now.
you first and then you passed me along to the city attorney.
Because that's who has the contract. I can't give you something that I physically don't have.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
So.
there we go.
No, but what we're saying is, we were trying to get the best we could for the cost, and 12% seemed ridiculous. And we were able to, it was outrageous as far as that goes. So having the spirit of competition between the two companies was good for the city in the fact that we were able to negotiate at least, 7.4% lower than what they initially told us they were gonna do. And like I said, the services that a broker provides, and this municipality, and I'm sure many other municipalities, is way better than us trying to manage our own plan and lose savings or lose sight of how this is gonna happen, whether we hire a human resource person or not. These people, in one company has 500 employees. This is what they do day to day. And that's how, with their expertise, they're able to get us the lower rates with Blue Cross Blue Shield. So that's why we wanted to try to get as close as we could so we could present you the numbers and not when we were going through the process and we weren't finished
Well,
with our
updates would have
negotiations.
been nice, but, so my other question is it something like Lolly had their initial price tag is good, right? And maybe it's better than Crown.
It was
But-
way better.
It was way better.
Right, so the fear though is that it has a cap, right? So if we use or have more claims, right, if our employees end up having more claims and we go over that cap, then that would fall back on the city potentially, right? But in theory then too, so again, Lolly's better price upfront, but potentially if there's too many claims that it could go over.
Well, Lolly said at the end of the day, Crowns, they couldn't come close to what Crown was offering. So
Is that the
They flat out
prescription?
told us that.
Is that
That-
in regards to the
the whole,
prescription?
Across the
the whole
board.
plan,
Yeah.
they could not approach Crown's numbers. So we need to go with Crown because it's the best thing, best plan for our employees. They've already agreed to it. We don't have to do any contractual obligations or renegotiations. And it's the best things for the residents because we were able to lower the rate from 12% down to 4.68%.
So there was
Plus
potential
the-
to change healthcare contracts, though.
There is potential to change it, absolutely, but Lolly said, I can't match
Okay.
Crown's numbers.
So just my big question was, again, we have one healthcare, which it is what it is right now, but why are we paying a broker to then broker one
Well,
healthcare? That's-
then
that was my question.
I would love you to tell me municipalities that don't go through a broker and find out what their cost savings are.
Okay, we'll have to find that.
Okay,
And they might have
thank
just an HR person who deals with a few different items.
Or an HR person that they're still paying.
Right, but 120, 150,000, I don't know, you know, so.
Well, if you look at the salaries, that's probably what
And that's
it
what
would
we're
be,
paying the
or
broker.
more.
Right, but then, you know, maybe they deal with, you know, other HR issues, they help negotiate Medicare, Medicaid, whatever, I don't know. So anyways, just a question brought up, I'd like to see more information, that would be great.
The other thing is Lolly wanted to have the city enter into a 3-year contract, which I didn't feel was feasible. And the fact that, we need to be in control of our healthcare costs, or at least apprised of it, and it needs to be a year-to-year situation, because we may find somebody else out there at some point.
Sure.
And I did tell Crown that, you know, going forward, we're gonna, you know, for us to do our due diligence, even though we've been having these wellness meetings and we've been meeting with them, trying to, have wellness initiatives to lower our healthcare costs, I would expect them and hold them to, you know, giving us the rates as early as possible so we can do our full due
And
diligence
it's a
on,
year,
yes.
a year
Well, we
contract.
worked this whole plan for the last year.
Yeah.
It's not something that we just said, oh, April, now we gotta do healthcare.
Well, it's kind of the first time I was informed, so.
We have been talking about it the entire year, and in negotiations the entire year, all of us.
I was involved.
Okay. I don't know why you
Well,
weren't.
I wasn't
Donna, were you
privy,
in?
no, I wasn't privy until, you know, I know that they've all been meeting, and I have confidence that Eric and Bob were in on the meetings. I went to one wellness meeting to do the, health fair with Blue Cross and Blue Shield, but like you said, Austin, we can't be up here 24/7, so someone has to
Totally,
take the
I
lead.
just like an email or something.
Yeah,
you know?
someone has to take the lead on it, and I feel that they negotiated against
And they
one
did a great-
company
that's
against
why you
each
chose
other,
these
and
two
it looks like they
individuals.
got the best
Yeah.
rates that we could get.
Eric and Bob worked really, really hard to
Here's
get
Bob.
to where this is. I sat in as an observer and to answer any questions that may have come from
Right.
my department, but these two really did the legwork, and it was a lot of
I'm
legwork to
sure
get
it
down to
was.
where we were, so,
It's not easy,
yeah.
and I'm sure it wasn't easy
Sure,
dealing
no.
with that.
And it was,
And to have Lolly come back and say they want us locked in for 3 years is not, we don't want that, we wanna be able to.
And that
go
could be
year to year.
negotiated,
and
so.
Blue Cross Blue Shield were in those meetings.
Okay,
Yes, they were.
alright, good to know. So yeah, any information you can pass along would be great.
Well, and that has to be done, since they have,
And
are we gonna be signing it?
we're gonna,
that
yeah, we're gonna be
finalized?
voting on it, I'm sure. And we
It's-
also didn't wanna
it's
have a lapse in
timely,
coverage, you know, deliberating on this too long, but, you know, I think that, like we were saying, we had countless meetings, countless man hours of trying to get the best rate for the city, because we know, budgets can be tight, and we didn't wanna pay a 12% increase, which would have been over close to $700,000.
Well, that was Crown's initial.
Right.
Or how do you, Mr. Mayor, how do you feel about all this?
Well, the whole point is that negotiations have been going on for a year. And there have been many meetings, and the last few involved not just one or two people and a couple council members, but they involved several company representatives from Lowry. And they had their top officials there. We also met with Blue Cross and Blue Shield while they were there. when we had the meetings with Crown, we ended up bringing in the president of, as well as the representatives. So there are some real discussions, and sometimes it got a little heated, so to speak, or I shouldn't say heated, but intense because of the effort that the council's trying to put in to lower these rates, which we felt were outlandish, to put it bluntly. And they moved from a 12 point whatever it was down to a 10 to a 7.3 or something. And we went back and forth, right up until the so-called deadlines that we found out really don't exist, to the point where we ended up with a 4.68, which they said couldn't be done, but it was done. And it's through the efforts of the council and everybody working together that, and Amanda, everybody working together to the point where the competitor, Lolly, actually said we'd be better off staying where we were because they could not match it. So that's how we ended up where we are.
Do we have any former employees who sit on Crown's board?
I don't know for sure.
Okay. Just wondering.
Does that make a difference?
I don't know.
Why would you ask that question?
I'm just wondering, you know,
Do we have any former employees that
we've
sit
been
on
able
Lawler's
to
board?
work with them at a different capacity, so.
I don't
Okay,
know.
we don't know.
I don't know
No
that for
idea.
sure.
And I don't think anybody cared, this was strictly a matter of getting the best
Yep.
option here, I mean, that's, at the end of the day, that's what it came down to.
But yeah, feel free to talk to Luke too, because he was reading over documents.
Yeah, I
and
reached out.
Rate sheets and things like that, so when he's under the weather now, but, I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you about it.
I'll give them a call tomorrow.
And any questions, you can call me, further, but I think because it's a policy and it's coming up for renewal and it is a high dollar amount, we should be voting on that as part of our,
When is that? When do you see that?
I would like to do
Soon, right?
it, I would like to do it on the next meeting, the 21st.
Can we make sure that I get some information to back all this up?
Yeah, and, did you get what we were saying today though? Did you write that down? As part of the information?
What's that, to contact Luke?
No.
The only thing that we even got finalized was on
The
Friday, so
percentage,
we were only
the
talking 2 days.
percentages and the low.
And I just haven't seen anything else, so,
Well, that's what I wanted to brief you.
thanks.
Yeah, my main message tonight was the best law I could do was 6%, so I want to make sure you wrote that down. And that we got to 4.68%, down from 12. So those
Okay.
were the takeaways
Good.
that I wanted you to be aware
I think it's important to emphasize also that Wally themselves recommended we stay with who we are, because who we're with, because they could not match it. And they tried.
Yeah, they did.
They tried.
Initially came in and said, we could do better, and they found out they couldn't.
So, but it's a lot of work, and like you said, Austin, I hear what you're saying as far as an HR person, but just like you said, also, they have a lot to do in their day-to-day. And these reports and these gathering of data, I mean, I've been in some of these meetings, it's a constant process, and Red Cross Blue Shield doesn't do it on their own. The brokers actually help as a go-between for the city to make sure that this is accurate and that it applies to us, and if we advise us of any changes that we need to make. Anybody else have anything for general discussion?
No, but I bet you the students want to get their papers signed
Yes, with that,
when we're done, right?
with that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Hey.
How are you?